we found that the people who really are real proper seafood connoisseurs and the actual diners are sticking with it as well, is that they really just love a piece of fish cooked simply with a simple side. Prawns and oysters and things like that don't need to be doled up. They don't need sauces. They don't need anything like that.
It is high summer and it's time to head to the coast. I am super excited today to have as our guest Sam Clayton. Sam is from Fisherman's Wharf, where they've been serving the freshest seafood on the Central Coast for over 40 years. Sam, so good to have you on the show. Welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks so much for having me on board.
Set the scene for us at the Fisherman's Wharf.
Well, we've been here slinging seafood for a few generations now. My grandparents started it back in the 70s. My parents have been doing it since the 80s, and I've been back here for about 12 years now, even though I worked here when I was a teenager and gave me all my spending money as a kid. So it's been summer is the is the season for seafood, so we're excited to get stuck into it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a multi-pronged business. Tell us about the different aspects to what you do there at Woy Fisherman's Wharf.
It is. We've always kind of offered almost like a trident of businesses. We've offered like a restaurant, a fresh seafood retail, and takeaway fish and chip shop. We've always kind of like believed in a bit of a horizontal integration, as my folks like to say, which is where the fish shop feeds the other sections. So it's a good place to kind of come down. You can come and dine in if you want, get oysters and prawns inside, and sit down, have a glass of wine, or you can just get it. Go and take away, go and sit in the park, or you can take it home and cook. That's always been our approach, is that it's the best way to make sure that you're, especially with perishable products, that you actually got multiple options for the usage for your customers.
And I mean, the whole idea with, being waterside is that the fish comes from just over there. You can sort of point to it. I mean, where does the seafood that you serve and sell come from?
We've got a general approach to trying to ensure that we use pretty much at least 90% of Aussie seafood, and the other 10% is pretty much taken up with Kiwi things like snapper and John Dory, things like that as well. And then we have like a small spattering of like Southeast Asian things like octopus and squid and things like that as well. But it's we try and keep it as local as possible. We've always had a really good relationship with local fishermen, especially the ones who fish the Hawkesbury and Tuggery Lakes. And then we've even got all of our rock oysters come from an oyster farmer who's he's got multiple leases all over Brisbane water. So you can actually like when you dine in the restaurant, you can see him fanging past in his barge multiple times a day.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's so great. There's something so special about eating seafood that is just from the area.
It is. Well, like, we're kind of blessed here. It's that whole thing is that, they say Australia is like an arid continent, but and its most fertile areas are all around river mouths. So being at the mouth of the Hawkesbury, which is a particularly fertile river, it's kind of means that we do get lots of really beautiful seafood around here. You get all things like mullet, whiting, jewfish, blackfish, many species, which we kind of try and champion here as well. So it's I think it's a sign of where we are, is that like our most popular fish is still mullet after all these years.
Oh, that's so interesting. How do people love their mullet?
Personal preference. I like when it's just caught and you just kind of skin and bone it, and you just pan fry it with a bit of butter and shallots. It comes up an absolute treat. But like a lot of the oldies who come in, they just like it plain old battered.
Fantastic. I love that. I mean, generational businesses are always interesting. Like, tell us about what it was like for you to grow up in and around your family business.
Well, it's kind of I like to say that it's the only constant in my whole life is this place. Means that because my parents they did this, but they were also property flippers. So we moved every 3 to 4 years basically when we were growing up. So I've always found this place to be home. It's but it's nice to really just help out and add to the business after all these years. Like, my grandparents started it because they got, and my parents, sorry, I should say, my whole family's always been in produce. My grandfather was one of the people who first set up produce for Woolies decades and decades ago. And then he had a midlife crisis and decided to move out of the city, move up to Woy. Started the seafood business up here, and then my parents, they were both journos and decided they just wanted to kind of get out of the city and see what they could explore outside of the city. Came up here and have actually kind of mirrored my life, where I got out of this and decided to go and work in media for a little while, and then didn't like it very much, and ended up coming back here, which was only supposed to be for summer, like my parents did, and everyone's ended up staying here.
Geez, I'm feeling like the only journalist that's stuck it out. I should be on the coast somewhere as well, doing beautiful things with seafood.
Oh well, no, it was more. Yeah, it's like, it is funny in that sense. So it's my wife still she worked in media as well, and she's now working as a interior designer as well. So it was more that thing of I don't know if it happens to you, but you get on a run of uninspiring projects and decide to try your hand at something else. Yeah.
Well, luckily I get to do something fun every day, which is talk to people about food. So I reckon like you're lucky in that sense. I'll be able to stick with it. So, I mean, what about when you sort of came up to the business and ended up staying? What do you reckon, what did you bring to it? What sort of changes did you and your partner make?
Well, when we came up, we it was when Sydney was instituting those new small bar licenses, which was almost 12 years ago now, where they made them a lot cheaper and easy to access. So I'd just come up and I was just hounding my parents because it had always been a BYO restaurant. So I just said, they should get a license. They should get a license. My sister is a sommelier, and she's got a lot of awards for her wine list over the years. So I said, just get Michaela to do a wine list for you. And they said, we can only be bothered doing it if you spearhead it. So I kind of came up and decided to take it over for a summer to see what I could do. And we ended up just changing the vibe of the place from being quite utilitarian to trying to give it a bit more of a as my wife and I had come from production design perspective in media, we decided to try and give the place a bit of a fresh look. So fresh look to it. We gave it a bit of a crab shack vibe. And people seemed to really respond well to that. We started seeing a bit of an upturn in business, and the actual wine list we thought was always going to be fun to work with, in the idea of that having just a basic fish and chip menu with very obscure left field upmarket wines. And it's just been a thing that people have responded really well to, and so we've just built on that. In the last 5 years, my wife and I worked with some builders, an architect, and some people to help redesign the restaurant, and that was in 2017. That was also a redesign, but also out of full necessity as well, because the place was actually going to fall in the water if we didn't do it. Okay.
So how would you describe it now? If I walked in, how would it feel?
Well, we've always, one of the things that people really loved about the old place was its shack feel, which was that you could literally dangle your arm over the edge, and even though it was up above the water, felt like you were right there on the water. So when we were doing the refit, we really wanted to bring nature in as much as possible. We've got a little mangrove island across from us, and the water is generally quite still here as well. It's quite a beautiful little landscape. So when you do those sorts of designs, you don't really want to shut out the outside world. You want to bring it in as much as possible. So we really just tried to work with still maintaining that feel of that you were right there on the water and you're part of the water. And so having all the floor to ceiling windows and the natural timber hardwood look all through it, and then very just kind of muted wicker chairs and everything like that as well, just really kind of makes it feel like you're part of nature while you're here as well. Not to mention with all the with the floor to ceiling windows, especially when the tide's moving quickly, it does feel like you're almost like bobbing on a boat.
Oh, it sounds so good. And what about the menu? What are there some dishes that, are sort of bolted on, or is it very much responding to the seafood that's coming through?
We have a bit of both. We've had a few core menu items that have stayed on for 40 years plus, which have been things like platters and whole just everyone loves a whole individual sized snapper. It's kind of it's one of the, like just grilled simply, which is just with a few veg. We've also just tried to really work with raw product as much as possible. So we're just using the local oysters, local sashimi. That's always been like a staple. Barbecue scampi, and then we have like a rotating fish list, which and specials list, which happens every day, and that depends on what we get from local fishermen and our other suppliers, which comes in through daily.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
So the eating experience of our plums is sweet. That's a primary driver. It's got to be sweet, but it's also got to have enough acid, because the mix of acid and sugar is what gives fruit its flavour. And in a plum, it tends to be slightly higher acidity. And then a really nice, full, not dry, but juicy explosion of juice into your mouth as you bite into it. That's nirvana for us in terms of plum.
For more information, go to montague.com.au. Where do you think the Australian diner is at in terms of seafood? Have you noticed a lot of changes? Like, have people become more adventurous, less adventurous? Are they looking for, classics or something a bit different and contemporary?
Well, we've got our simple ethos with seafood has always been keep it simple, stupid, which is seafood. I know we're going to sound completely biased. Or no, I'm going to sound completely biased when I say this anyway. Is that seafood is the most perfect food group. You actually don't need to do anything to it to actually make it better. So we feel like if you try and play around with seafood too much, you've failed already. With it. So it's we found that the people who really are real proper seafood connoisseurs and the actual diners are sticking with it, as well as that they really just love a piece of fish cooked simply with a simple side. Prawns and oysters and things like that don't need to be doled up. They don't need sauces. They don't need anything like that. They just need to be served like that. And we found our business has never dropped off or suffered in any way in that, financially, thankfully, we've managed to get through COVID while a lot of others have struggled, but and we're eternally thankful for that. But it's we haven't seen the diners tastes change overly much. If anything, they've kind of turned away from people who play around with it too much to kind of coming back to simplicity, and I said we'll be eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, well, I think, obviously that all rests on the quality of the seafood. So
100%, yeah. It has to be good seafood. That's the thing is if it's really good seafood, you don't have to do anything to it. You can just put it on a plate and people will enjoy it.
Yeah, I really agree. I love oysters, and I know that, often they come with a mignonette or something, and I feel bad that, someone's gone to all that trouble to chop those shallots so beautifully, but I still don't want to put them on my oysters because I just want to taste the oyster itself. But yeah.
I'm with you 100% on that. That's it. When I get oysters in from my oyster farmer every day, I pretty much take it just a tray home by myself and just eat a dozen to myself, and just as they are every day.
Yeah. I mean, you got to do that quality control, don't you, Sam? So
yeah, well, that's what I call it. That's what I like to call it.
That's fantastic. And what about staffing? I mean, it's a challenge throughout the hospitality and food service industry, around the world, really, but particularly in regional areas. How do you guys go for that?
We've always struggled to find quality staff, and we always found that when we've found really good ones, we try and hold on to them as long as possible. It has been this is. I was actually chatting to my old man the other day, and he was saying that this is the hardest time they've had for how long they've owned it, for 35 years with COVID, and then with the staffing issues which have risen from that, which is. It was that thing, and I look at my Seek ads that I put out for staff. In 2019, pre-COVID, I had 220 applications for a wait staff position, and then when I put one out, I think it was the middle of early 2021, and I had 8 applications. and there were people who didn't have any weight experience or anything like that. It was just like somebody who wanted to be like, who was a truck driver, nurse, like things who were just, and a lot of older people who'd obviously been let go out of other positions, which was kind of disconcerting in its own way.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I suppose, you know, life experience can be a great asset in hospitality as well, I suppose. I'm definitely noticing some people who, seem to have had experience in other careers coming in, especially front of house. And I mean, that's great. It's great, but it then perhaps, it is, you need those experienced staff as well.
Oh, we have, we've got like a number of experienced staff and people who, like, we've got a couple of staff who have been here 20 years plus with us as well, and they're obviously the most valuable staff members, the ones, and then a few other ones who've had, who like younger people who've come on board who actually have significant hospitality experience as well. But it is that thing, having the three prongs of the business is that hard part as well, because you're advertising for multiple different positions, retail positions, hospitality positions, and then just takeaway staff as well. So it's it's always, I always feel like I'm running like we like to joke that Seek's one of our most expensive employees because that's
yeah, always putting in the hard yards there.
They are. They're doing a lot of work for us.
And when you've got this sort of, quite interesting and creative wine offering, I mean, that sounds like a challenge in terms of, I guess, servicing it, because, people really need to be steered towards wine that, perhaps they're not familiar with. Do you find that a particular challenge, and how do you deal with that?
We have always operated with that kind of left field wine list, but it is quite a small list. So I think having the smaller lists requires people to ask, like customers especially, to ask questions as to what particular varietals they don't understand are. We've always structured it in a pretty simple way, which we run it through lightest through to heaviest, so people can understand that it's like, so even if just a simple thing, if it's right down the bottom of the list, it's going to be a heavy white if I don't understand, or a heavy red. If it's at the top, then it's going to be light. We also have always run specifically with no sweeter wines, nothing too punchy. My sister's speciality is she's always liked quite subtle wines. That's kind of her main focus, and that's her, and the subtle floral and slightly with a little bit of berries and some minerality has always allowed us to kind of have wines which suit well with seafood. So people have been coming here for a while, know that the wines are going to be within certain parameters. They're not going to be expecting anything too kind of out there or something that they won't like. They're not going to get a really overly sweet wine, or they're not going to get an overly punchy wine. Yeah.
That sounds like such a good approach. So it's so there is this sort of interest and, things that people perhaps haven't tried before, but if they're within a certain, set of parameters, then it's like it's almost like, sounds like you can't really go too wrong.
No, we can't. We don't we very rarely have somebody say they don't like one of the wines. And that's all credit to my sister with that. Myself and my restaurant manager, Alessandra, we do pick a few wines every now and then, but it's always with the approval of the overlord.
Michaela, what do you reckon?
Yes, yeah.
Sam, is there a wine match for summer that you're particularly loving?
We've got a really beautiful Chenin Blanc on at the moment, which is out of Vouvray, which is just an absolute killer, which we're loving at the moment. And what else have we got going? There's an Aligot, which is a style very similar to Chardonnay, but not quite as woody. It's kind of more of it's almost like an austere Chardonnay, and they're two absolutely just spectacular summer wines. And what do you reckon they'd go really well with? The Chenin Blanc just goes with anything kind of sharp as well. It's so because it kind of smooths it out a bit. And the Chardonnay just goes so the Aligot just goes perfectly with any of our whitefish. It's just an absolute dream with it. Yeah, so good. And when I come to Woy Woy, what are some of the other things that people love to do in the area? Well, like it seems like a quite a like simple thing to say, but the ferry that kind of stops next to us does like an hour round trip, and it's awesome. It's a really beautiful ferry ride to do that. You can go to the beach around here. Then there's also lots of great little bars and restaurants around here. I've got a few of my mates here in Woy have got some great probably the coolest pizza shop in Australia, Tropicana Pizza. Sorry, Tropicana Social Club, they now call themselves. And then I got my mates at Young Barons. Then down at Edalong, there's a burgeoning little scene going on as well with guys down at Lucky Bee and Osteria Olcotia. So there's all these great little things happening in the area. We've kind of seen a massive demographic change, especially in the last 5 years, where people moving up from the city are starting to actually kind of create a scene that they've wanted. They moved up here and they've got the beach, they've got the good like kind of coastal lifestyle, and now they're trying to create a bit of culture or bring back a bit of culture to the area.
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, does that make you excited? Do you sort of welcome those additions to the landscape?
Yeah, well, I found that up here is that it's not really a competitive scene. It's more of it's a real prop up scene, which is a really lovely thing, is that everyone's always like trying to get behind each other and saying, well done guys, you guys are like we're happy you're here, you're adding to the area. It's not like, oh shit, they're like someone else has moved in here and they're taking our stuff or anything like that. It's a good prop up scene.
So good. And I mean, summer, I'm assuming, is the busiest time, but what are the rhythms during the year? And do you have a favourite season, Sam?
I'm a real summer kid personally. That's always my favourite area around here, just because the area pumps. Like I live, I've always been around here in Woy, but I live over in Avoca, and it's beautiful over there this summer year. We've got great beach over there in Avoca, and a really good cool little community. And then we have for business wise, we go normally from October long weekend all the way through to Anzac Day is our big season. But we've always traditionally still been pretty strong in winter, especially once everyone gets used to the cold. People love it, and being a lunch venue as well. People like it doesn't get very cold during the day. So people can just come and dine in our it almost acts like a greenhouse, the restaurant in the middle of winter. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, it just sounds absolutely idyllic. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us today, Sam. It's just really makes me feel like I've got can breathe in the salt air and a dozen oysters on the way. So thanks so much for taking time out of your busy summer's day to have a chat to us here at Dirty Linen.
No worries. Thanks, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This